Hello and welcome to Leading Ladies with me, Sarah Burney. That really, I say this all the time, but I love that chat just now. I spoke with Heidi, and this lady had contacted me after hearing a podcast with Cara Kemp and said, how much she had enjoyed listening to the podcast. We had a few little emails back and forth. I found a little bit more about her and asked her if she would come on the podcast. And 2 weeks later, here we are. We've just finished our chat. Incredible lady, great story. Heidi is a seasoned production stage manager with a career spanning from theatre, live TV, film and large scale productions. From the Lion King and Celine Dion's Vegas residency to the Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra at Temple Square. She thrives in high-pressure live events, passionate about mentorship and mental health in the industry. Heidi values adaptability, strong relationships and kindness. She's also dedicated advocate for Make-A-Wish Foundation and Stand Up to Cancer, inspired by her son and her mum, which that actually nearly brought a tear to my eye, just talking about, cancers and all the rest of it. She's currently preparing the Tabernacle Choir's Buenos Aires concert. Heidi's been involved with the Tabernacle Choir for 20 years now. So 20 years, moving from, let's say, the high life of Las Vegas, moved to Salt Lake City, met her husband, had 2 lovely children who are now 17 and 14. Her motto, which I love this, love and kindness. That is why we are here, and it is so true. So please enjoy this latest podcast with Heidi.
Lightswitch is a collective of award-winning lighting, media, and visual designers committed to changing how people experience the world. For more than 30 years, we have been practicing pragmatic design. At Lightswitch, we believe it's our responsibility to keep our clients' creative, logistical, and financial objectives in balance. Lightswitch's range of expertise is extensive, from working one-on-one with clients and artists to multidisciplinary teams collaborating on all visual aspects of temporary and permanent projects. Lightswitch creates unforgettable moments and powerful experiences. We celebrate our team, clients, and all of our industry's diverse and talented people. As a part of our commitment to inclusion in all aspects of entertainment and experience design, Lightswitch is proud to sponsor Leading Ladies.
La 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 la, ladies, la ladies, la la la. Now here's the Leading Ladies by Geezers of Gear. On tour, maybe she got some stories to share. Now here's the Leading Ladies by the Geezers of Gear. Rock star ladies with some stories to share, because la 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 ladies, la ladies, la la la.
Hello, Heidi, and welcome to Leading Ladies.
Hello.
I was just saying to you, so I'm going to let our listeners know, you actually contacted me, it was about 2 weeks ago now, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and it was so lovely because the podcast with Cara Kemp had just been uploaded, and you sent me an email saying that you've basically stumbled across the podcast, said how great it was, and that you was actually in Peru at the time, just finished a big gig, which we're going to get to. And of course we had a couple of emails back and forth, and I was like, would you like to come on? And you was like, yes. So here we are.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, really. It's so that for me was such a surprise, because normally I've been connected with people, but for someone to reach out, you know, just through finding the podcast and enjoying it and then wanting to be on, like, yeah, really, really good. So please tell me like a little bit about you. Where are you now? I always like to ask that.
Salt Lake City, Utah.
Wonderful. And you said it's been quite a nice day today.
The sun is finally out. Yes, yes.
Good, good, good. And you've just finished, well, you've just got back from Peru, Lima, Peru, working for the Tabernacle Choir. And
Yes.
please, like, let's start with that event. I watched it on like the YouTube. It looked incredible.
It was our
Really.
fourth stop on a kind of a tour blitz. And it was at the National Soccer Stadium in Lima. And we started off about 2 years ago in Mexico.
Yeah,
I've been with the Tabernacle Choir for about 20 years, and they used to tour once every 2 years.
right.
And when this management took over, they said, let's try something different. And they really, really meant it. To take this large of a group someplace twice a year has been a huge challenge, and it's been exciting. But they haven't played outside like they did in Lima in the history that I've known them, to
Yep.
what was 33,000 plus people.
Really, it sent just goose pimples, just like the vast size of it. I mean, really. I mean, how many? So let's go back. So you've been working for them for 20 years.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you get involved? Where did you start with them? How did you start with them?
I was down in Las Vegas for the first 2 years of Celine Dion show at
Yeah.
Caesar's Palace.
Hmm.
And we had a great schedule, a fabulous schedule there. And during one of the breaks, somebody had me come up here and stage manage just for the weekend. And the relationship kind of grew from there. And when I left working in Las Vegas, I took a full-time job up here, and I've been their event manager and then their production manager for 20 years. I was about 7 years as their event coordinator, and
Yep.
about 14-ish as their production manager.
So before this, you hadn't. Where's home for you? Like
It
before
was
Salt.
Las Vegas before that, and then I was in Los Angeles before Celine.
Oh my goodness. So really like even just like a whole cultural shock coming
Yeah,
from like those
yeah,
especially Los Angeles and Las Vegas. I mean,
yeah,
going from there to Salt Lake City, like that just huge,
yeah.
And so obviously you fell in love with there the heart your where it's now home. You've got two children, is that correct?
I did. I met my husband here too.
Oh, see, amazing. So,
Yeah.
so you met your husband. Does he work for the choir as well?
No, he works for the post office.
Oh, wow. Like literally, like
Yeah,
like this way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that, I mean, again, so you started working there, decided was it going to be like a temporary thing? Not temporary, but
I was really looking for a house job. I got spoiled with Celine's show, because
hmm
I had been heavily freelancing in Los Angeles and New York before that. And it was right about the time I was 30. And I just knew one day I'd wake up and want a house job. And Celine's was temporary, right? Despite the fact she played for multiple years. And so when this opened up and I could sit in one city for a while, I thought, let's see how I would do. And
Yep.
I ended up really liking it. And obviously I've stayed for 20 years,
Yeah.
but yeah, the one place worked out well.
And so I'm sort of obviously going from, this busy, hectic, okay, Celine was a little bit sort of calmer, shall we say, more like
Yeah.
time off as such in between. But before Celine, like where did your career start in this industry?
Theater. I just
Theatre.
loved theater. Yeah, I grew up in Florida,
Okay.
and I just fell in love with theater. I really fell in love with the live part of it.
Yep.
So I went to college in Pittsburgh, and then I worked out of New York for few years, and then of course got hooked on touring.
As we do.
Yeah, that's what I really liked. That's what I liked. And then when I got the chance to go to LA, I thought I might like film.
Yep.
And there I kept up theater, but I also fell in love with live TV there. I got into kind of the award show circuit And I loved that.
But again, always, back to back, whether it be
Hmm.
theatre, like really a hectic lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah.
And how did you like cope, with that? I always ask this question, like looking after mental health and like your well-being. Like obviously you found a good balance to sustain this lifestyle at the beginning.
Yeah, but it wasn't discussed back then. I'm showing my age,
But
but
no, if
it
I'm
really
honest,
wasn't.
I've had so many people like, come on here now, and this is a new thing to talk about it. Like this is really a new thing, and I'm
Yeah,
happy that it is, because the it used to be shunned upon, if you was not feeling so good, or something was going on and you didn't quite even me, my moods, it's only been in the recent, I don't know, 5 years or something, that I've actually understood myself more, because
yeah.
I've spoken about stuff. And I think that just makes everybody better within the team that you're working with. And so going back to the very start and looking now, how would you see like the changes, like even in yourself or with crews?
Well, I was fortunate enough back then that I worked for nice people. And when you find your people, you tend
Yeah.
to want to work for them again and again. And I credit those friendships,
Yeah.
some of which I actually brought with me to Peru,
Ah,
that were lifelong, where they checked on you, they made sure you were okay. And I look back and I don't think I would have been okay if it wasn't for people like that. But by the time I had gotten to Los Angeles, that was where, particularly on sets,
mhm.
self-care was becoming very prevalent. So I thought I was in heaven one day on a set. I turned around and somebody had ordered a masseuse.
Ah,
And
yeah.
I honestly thought back then it was an independent feature, but I'm like, I've really made it. I can go
Yeah.
over to the massage table and spend my lunch getting my shoulders worked on. And I thought that was great. And that really rolled into, I mean, California really does know how to live.
Mhm.
They take their time. They take their time with crew breaks. And they really cherish a lot of the crews, which is again why you continue to work for people. But it really cumulated. It peaked with me with Celine, it was incredibly protective of her crew,
Mhm.
that took very good care of them. You were taken care of all year long. You were valued. We didn't necessarily have a counselor or anything, but there were a few people, dancers, that ran into some personal problems,
Mhm.
and they left for a little bit, and she took care of them for the variety of issues.
Really
You know,
nice.
yeah, she took care of them from A to Z. She made sure that they had what they needed, and they returned to the workplace.
Yep.
And to this day, you see how indebted they were to her and her organization for making sure they were okay. One of the things about Las Vegas, and this struck me, is when I walked into Caesar's Palace in the crew area, because we were paid by her but worked at Caesar's,
Ah,
and they
right.
were opening up the venue for the first time. And when you walk through the employee area, every so many feet were pamphlets, and they were for Alcoholics Anonymous and Gamblers Anonymous. A-
Wow.
And I never thought about that, but when you work in one of those places, it does turn into an issue for people. You're right.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
alcohol's there, the gambling's there. Particularly a lot of people in our crew and dancing wise, that's the best money they made. They were homeowners for the first time. So she just made sure that people were watched and taken care of and valued. And it really changed my life and my outlook on it. Because I think, too, as crew, you just have to keep going. The schedule is such that you have to
Yeah.
keep going, that was such an afterthought to us.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, you're the first one that I've had on here that's really praised an artist. And, I like, and that is really, I like her even more now. Like, like,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it is about, I've said many times on here, there became a part or a time where it was literally stadium back to back, get on a bus, load in, load out, load in, load out, load in, load out. And I would turn down some jobs by looking at these schedules and go, I can't, like that's just crazy.
Yeah.
That's just such a crazy schedule. And then you hear on the flip side, like another tour that's going out, and they've got breaks in between, and like, that's how you care for your crew, so
Yeah.
they have that downtime, they give their best performance coming out of it, and it's not just that you're, I don't know, making money, or it's that you are being looked after.
Yeah. And I noticed there too when I arrived with her, because I got the job when I was on another play in Arizona. So I called back, and when her show first opened, it was very Cirque-like, Cirque du Soleil-like. Franco Dragon, who directed the initial one, came out of O.
Yep.
And I'm a very literal person. And as much as I like Cirque du Soleil, I went, I don't know if I can do that 52 weeks out of the year, because it's very kind of out there to
I
me,
was gonna say,
right?
how long was it? How long was you on that? It was
I was there for 2 years, but she worked an average of about 27 or 30 weeks out of the year.
wow,
But we were employed for 52.
that's incredible.
And
That
so I went, I think this might be too weird for me. So I called back to LA and a couple of friends. And the first one I connected with goes, I'm going to stop you.
Yeah,
You're going to be more well taken care of by this woman than you ever have in your life. She is exactly what people say she is. Her husband is the same way. Her organization is the same way. Because I was kind of tired. I was probably really burnt out. I probably was categorically burnt out for the first time. And he said, if you need a break from this grind in LA, this has fallen into your lap for a reason.
and so for the whole year or the 2 years, were you based and you lived in Vegas, or yeah, you
Yeah.
were. So how did you find? I mean, only because I went there with my husband for LDI last year, and we were there for 10 days. Of the
Yeah.
not LDI wasn't that long, and my boss Marcel, he was like, Sarah, 10 days is too long, and I said, but we've never been before. Wow. I mean,
Yeah. It's a lot of effort.
it's a lot of effort. We didn't actually, we had a couple of goes on the slot machines, but we got scared basically. Like it was too much. I
Yeah.
can't do all that. And just the expense of it, that's just one thing. I mean, we were like, okay, so we're not going to be drinking or eating or doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's gotten nothing but more expensive.
Crazy prices. I mean,
Yeah.
really, I knew it was going to be expensive, but not as expensive as, just for your average Starbucks, like
Yeah.
$12 for a double espresso. Like, really?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I bought my first house about 6 or 8 months there, which was lovely. I really bought kind of cheap,
Yep.
but I got out before the housing market burst there. And we got given kind of a heads up from production that it was going to get bad. So a lot of us got out of the housing thing like right in the nick of time, because
That's,
it got bad there.
yeah. And that's why when you said about, giving out the leaflets, giving out this, because, it is on tap. And if you are earning good money, and you do have those times off, I could quite easily see that becomes something that you do, if you
Yeah.
haven't got anything else going on. In fact, it was, I've forgotten her name now. I always do this. I need to make a list of all my names. I had another lady on, and she also was in Vegas for a long time. And, she said the same thing. It was kind of like a bit of a struggle because you're in that environment, and, she didn't want to go out and drink.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, look, you've got very close. I mean, now I would love to go back because you've got so many walks around just out an hour's drive.
Yeah.
You've got some fantastic walking. We love walking. And if I went back again, then certainly I would like get a car and like go further out rather than stay in Vegas. But we needed also 10 days to see it all.
Yeah.
I still
Yeah.
could actually spend another 10 days there. We didn't do everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, what would you say was like has been your most challenging or rewarding production that you've worked on, like from Celine to any of your productions that you've actually worked on?
I would say these tour stops between Mexico City and Lima. And one of the reasons being is the shows are different. We call it a tour because it's going to go on through 2026. but the content of the show is different. That the headliners that sing in front of the choir are different. So it's very challenging. And when I actually went back and watched Lima, I kind of got moved to tears because you're just doing it. And then to see one of the drone shots, I was like, that was a lot of work. that worked. It worked, first of all. So that I think has been the most challenging. I'm grateful for the fact they've let us bring in a lot of vendors to make it work because, they're a funny organization because they're huge, but they're very template orientated, right? You have 360 singers, you have 80 musicians, and to take them out of that comfort zone has been amazing, but we would not have been able to do it without the vendors that we've used.
But even that, 360 singers.
Yeah.
360.
Yeah. And they're two chartered planes to get them into a country.
And
Yeah.
I mean, so I want to get back. I want to get into so are they all from, I'm going to maybe sound stupid now, are they all from Salt Lake City or around the world? Like
they are. They can live 100 miles outside of Salt Lake City, and they are all volunteers in service to the church. This is their music. Yeah. So this is and when we take them out of the country, that's usually their vacation time.
Wow.
So they're given accommodations and they're given food money, but that's what they want to do. They can't go 100 miles. So I think you can get almost to the border of like Idaho and still do it.
Still come in and do it. And I mean, audition wise, I mean, surely if you're a singer, like you want to be part of this.
Yeah.
Like, you want to be part of this. And so, I mean, how often do you have auditions, or do you have
once a year? And it's a very kind of strenuous, it's a big audition process.
Yeah.
And then if they get into it, they go to what they call a choir school for 3 months, which is one night of kind of what I call music theory. And for instance, the other night it's going on now, they were taught pieces that they'll perform in a few months. They were kind of taught what it's like to sing in each of the venues. And then on the other night, they're taught performance mode. And since we do a TV show on top of everything else, 52 weeks out of the year on Sunday mornings, they're taught how to sing on camera without being a soloist. They want to keep them as sort of one unit. So they're taught to sing as a choir, which is almost the antithesis of a lot of people who sing, right? Because you learn to be expressive. And so they're taught how to be camera ready for 3 months. And at the end of that, they have to take a test, a written test. Yeah, it's hard.
So now I don't understand, that seems like a lot of hours. So you don't want to be you don't want to be driving however many hours to do this. So you really want to be close. Like that's the first and foremost. And if it is, voluntary, you've also got they've got their other job to come and do this as well, unless they're super rich and that's it. But that's just the dedication to come into this is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, and you have a fair amount of them that are music teachers. Like my kid's high school music teacher and I found out after they started high school, is in the choir. And some of them move here to audition for the choir. She was one of those that felt like she could spend raising her kids and teaching and then being in the choir at the same time.
But this is what I was going to say. Like you probably have got people from around different states, but they've moved closer to be part of this. Yeah. And found that they fell in love with it and fell in love with the whole organization. Do you have a lot of people that the singers come and go? Maybe they do one.
A little bit. They can sing for up to 20 years or when they're 60. They do ask them to retire at 60 because I guess biologically that's when your voice might not be as strong. Yeah.
Yep. And the age, 18 to join, or is it older?
I believe it's 25. I think it's 22 or 25. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, by that stage, you've either been in a choir in your state, wherever you've really, this is like a dream. You move, you come, and you're part of this incredible,
Yeah. Yeah.
incredible choir. So this tour now, you started in Mexico. Did you say New Mexico you started?
Mexico City.
Oh, I love Mexico City.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Really, absolutely love it. Started there, and that was when last year.
Yes. Last June.
Last June. Okay, so
Yeah.
all the preparations for all of that, getting everybody there, logistically, all the accommodation, like, and how
Yeah.
long are you? So there's the gig. Do you have rehearsal days like you wouldn't do a normal tour, or are you there longer before
So
the actual show?
yeah, we rehearse hopefully 2 days in the venue before time. Again, it depends on their headliners.
Right, of
In
course.
Peru, one of the challenging part was there was a lot more singers than we've ever had. We had a family musical group, Conseca, a gentleman named Mauricio. I mean, we had a lot of singers in that one. Most of the time, it's probably one or two that we have. So the rehearsal time is a little bit shorter. And they always sing in each of these cities one VIP concert that's not
Okay.
at your main venue. In Mexico City, we drove out to Toluca, Mexico, and sang at a Catholic church,
Ah.
which was a fabulous, we were invited by that church to sing. And it was amazing to do. Unfortunately, these guys are so big, going into a smaller venue like that, you're in somebody else's,
Yeah.
sanctuary. It went much better than I thought it would. I worry about piling in 300 people to that, but it ended up turning out very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I've seen the stadium in Lima, it just like you said, the drone shots going over, and for you to be there, to feel it, and they're your friends and your family on that stage.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
that, and for 20 years for you to be for doing it this long. Of course, you fell in love with your husband. You got two beautiful children now, and yeah, fantastic. And the next project, where are you going next year? Oh, this year
Uh,
actually. It's August, isn't it?
August, it's Buenos Aires.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a real quick turnaround. I know it's
Yeah.
not in Poorland, but like that is
Yeah.
for what you're doing.
And I leave in about 2 weeks to go down to look at it with kind of all parties, marketing, the venue. And we've gotten a music hall, we hope, for a VIP reception, which is actually much easier than going to a church, right? That's heaven sent in the sense that it's production ready.
Yep.
So,
And so with that crew, you'll do like a site test, go
yep.
around. Do you have all the hotels and everything ready? Like that's already blocked
Yeah,
off?
I'm so thrilled I don't have to book the choir's hotel. I just book the
Okay.
crew because the
Right.
choir really takes over a hotel. It,
Yeah.
it, it, it kind of invades it, in the sense that I do move the crew out of the hotel with them when I can,
Hmm.
because a lot of times when we're going to work, they're going to breakfast. And you can literally be on floor 15 and not get an elevator for 35
Okay.
minutes. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
lot of them.
I've been in that kind
Yeah,
of situation as well, where all the escalator, you're like, come on, I've got to get down,
yeah,
I've got to leave time.
yeah, yeah. And I can get some really interesting phone calls from the crew. I'm stuck on floor 15. I can't get to breakfast. It's hard. It's hard.
And what would you say? I mean, so after this one, where do you go after that next year? Where's next year's tours?
Then next February, it's Brazil. So they
Yeah,
hope
it's
to,
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
in Sao Paulo, I've been there before with a couple of shows. And I don't know. I think between those three countries, I think Brazil may be the hardest. Argentina has a lot of uh, logistics,
Yes.
government logistics.
Yes. Yep. I've only ever sort of traveled that way because I used to work for Formula One. So
Oh,
spending time, like yeah, Sao Paulo and that, it was always difficult. Like
yeah.
really, it was always difficult from the vending side, from everything there. I mean, it was just everybody would be like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
incredible place. And then I was fortunate to travel around. But yeah, from my memory, just having, like I said, the merchandise outside, there was the rules, the regulations, the backhanders, you can't do that. Then also people did steal loads of stuff as well. Like that
Mhm.
was, that was a huge thing. I mean, we had carjackings, like
Really?
actually, yeah, it was, I'm sure it was, I want to say it was Jensen Button, but I'm not sure. But he literally came out of the racetrack, and yeah, it was like the carjacking, and I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, like just, and anyway. So yeah, there's lots of things to take in, especially when you've got a crew that's visiting countries as well. I suppose it's with any tour, where you've got to be respectful to different cultures, different everything as well. Um, but how does, like, the volunteers, you say that like they normally take their holiday time to do it. Do you give them like a couple of extra days to visit like around after the gig, or is it literally like fly in and leave?
It's about 5 to 7 days for them.
Okay.
And we take 320 singers, and there's 360 in the choir. So you usually have people who, are restricted on vacation,
Hmm.
but a lot of them know that this is kind of a rarity, this kind of blitz
Yeah.
between now and 2027. So I did have one of them, I believe it was when we went to Manila, said that he took some paid time off without pay because he really
Yeah.
wanted to go sing there.
I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like really, if I had this incredible voice, I'd be moving over to you now to do this audition, but I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if that's your passion, at the end of the day, I always say this: life is for living. It's not just about working.
Uh-huh.
Life is for living, and if this is your passion, you're good at singing, you have joined this incredible choir, and you get given the opportunity to go to Manila, to go to all these incredible countries around the world once a year, twice a year, then you've got to do it.
Yeah.
Like you've got to do it. And what about your kids? Like, do you sing? That's a question.
I don't. I
No.
don't. And my kids, oddly enough, still want to go to their school choirs after dragging them to rehearsals for such a large part of their life. I remember my son, when he was 5, made a drawing of a choir loft and labeled it tenors, basses, sopranos, like at 5. And I was like, so maybe you shouldn't come to work with me as much as you do. You seem to be very versed on it, but they still go, they still belong. And again, their choir teacher, who happens to be in the choir, is a big magnet. Kids really like to sing with her. They choose the school to sing with her because of her passion for choir music. So they've kind of lucked out that way, that they still really like it. And I credit a lot of the teachers. They
Yeah.
also see the current conductor and associate conductor of the Tabernacle Choir are a large part of my longevity with them, because I do love their music. I love their arranging of what they do. And they happen to also, in this world, they are rock stars,
Yep.
right? You Google Mac Wilberg and he goes off the charts on your Google in the land of choir music. But they are also, what has been so good to both me and my family is their kindness. They're very kind to work for. And going from Celine to them, I really call myself very lucky, and to be able to show my kids that's what keeps you places. That's what matters. And that's what they should be. It scares me now, but my 17-year-old daughter is very interested in doing this for a living. So I go, oh, okay. So she has started with her school, and she did her first 2 stadium concerts as a crew
Oh,
last year.
fantastic.
Yeah. So to be able to show her, you want to find a place where kindness is your
So
motivating
actually,
factor.
that's then a good, because you can give the example of, being, let's say, a lady in the industry for one, but not just about being a lady, about having the kindness. And obviously your daughter for the last 17 years has seen that you've worked and heard that you've worked for kind people, but of course it's not always like that. So going out into this, what advice would you give your daughter? I normally say, what advice would you give, the younger Heidi, but what advice now would you give your daughter going into this industry and deciding, you know, whether it's production, like, yeah, what is she interested in?
I would say keep trying everything. You
Yeah.
know, I think when we get started and we know that's our ticket and not losing that
Hmm.
ability to be able to help in any way, and to gravitate to find your people you're willing to sit with for 52 weeks out of the year doing a live TV show and
Yeah.
anything else they want. That those are really that matters. It's the personal relationships. She and I are, and I could see a lot of myself in her. I was very shy.
Hmm.
And I think I probably would have ended up, not that there's anything wrong with it, in a cubicle, but now it's the people's interaction that's meant the most to me.
Yep. Yeah. And I suppose, obviously, on that side of it, looking at it like, you know, work for people that are kind, but what would you tell her if she had a negative experience? How would you explain to deal with that?
I always tell her and any other kids I've been able to talk to throughout the years, you have to rise above that. And to have longevity in the business, you have to be the person in the room that people want to hang out with,
Yeah.
that they want to be with, that they want to produce a product with. So if you have a jerk in the room, you got to still keep being yourself. It isn't necessarily always about being right or wrong. It's about being the positive contributor to it. If you are not who people want to be in a room with for 18 hours a day, it's not going to give you longevity. It's not going to be happy for you.
Yep. I think that's brilliant advice because I also say the same thing. Like, you know, I've over the years experienced, you know, different scenarios, situations that, you know, I've gone, okay. But I like the younger me probably would be feisty and, you know, bah, what are you on about? Now I'm like, okay, I'll let
Yeah.
you say your piece. I'll go back to my room and, you know, cry, scream, whatever, but I will keep how I want to be, and how I want to be is quite calm. I want to make sure that everybody's happy in what they're doing, although I hate the word happy, but you understand, like I want everyone to, like, you know, I think happy, the word happy for me is there's more than happy. It's not just happy, it's
Exactly.
but, you know, especially when we do have big challenges, and, you know, we do, you know, we in everything we do, we have big challenges, and it's about sticking together as a group, as humans as well. You know, it's not whether you're a lady, whether you're a man. It's being human and being kind to everybody, in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
And
also find that the people who really find that in life and are the most successful, I've never been treated badly by somebody who's been able to figure that out, right? Actors, directors, anybody who has that always does value the people around them.
yeah, in fact, it was when you were saying about Celine, like looking after like one of the dancers. I like it brought back a memory of I felt very ill when I was working in Formula One, and I lost my balance, and I flew out, and I was like, oh, I really don't feel so good. I don't feel so good. And then anyway, I got into work, and I literally was walking down the paddock. Everyone's setting everything up. This is the crazy time. This is like, you know, the pre-rigging and all the rest of it. And I just kept on like just falling, and I was like, oh.
Oh,
So they sent me straight to the medical center. I'm petrified of needles, everything anyway. So of course that was traumatic enough for me. Anyway, long story short, I got taken to hospital, and I can't remember, what was it called now? Anyway, I lost basically my balance in my head, and my body was here, but it thought I was over there. I
wow.
needed like serious medical treatment. Ron Dennis, at the time, that was McLaren, he found out that I was in hospital, and he was like, well, what's she still doing here? And they're like, well, she's in some remote place in Germany. Like, we can't get her. There's no aeroplane. She can't travel on her own. This, that, and the other. He went, my jet's there.
Yeah.
Get her back. And I remember I was like, what? And he literally flew his private jet back from Germany to England just for me, to send me to hospital in England where I got treatment. I was probably sick for 2 months, everything taken care of, still got paid, still he was making sure that I was okay. And for me, I was like, wow, like, you know, no, none of this, like, oh, claim it on your insurance, or I've, the worry of not having any money to pay my rent. He was like, you tell her not to worry and tell her that her job's here when she comes back.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that makes all the difference.
really,
Yeah.
and in a way, I mean, of course, I had interaction with him, but I still, I wasn't his best buddy. I wasn't like somebody. I was, a worker for him, but that is how I think how I like to be. Obviously, love to be treated that way, but from anybody, if I work in a corner shop here, if you're treated with kindness and respect, I'll do anything. Like really,
Yeah.
if you call me at any time at night, morning, whatever, I'll do anything for you. If you're a douchebag,
Yeah.
I'm less inclined. I won't be nasty, but
Right, right.
I certainly will be like, oh, I'm so sorry, but I
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
And I hope that other people would do the same for me.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because I'm, like I like to think I'm nice and that way. But I think now talking about, people caring, I was looking at tours today. Long story, but I was looking at different tours today, and I was like, that's a really nice schedule. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's not as nice as a Celine one or some other ones, but I was like, wow. I remember looking a year ago or something, or 2 years, and it was like back to back to back, like I said, and I was like, "Phew, how can you do that?" And then I was looking at these ones, I was like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
You've got a travel day, you've got a day off, you've got two back to backs there, but keep strong, you can do it. There's a break in between this, and I really hope that more artists and all like everyone involved in putting the tours together really are listening to everybody now and making it not so much about money. I mean, I might be
Yeah.
wrong in that. What do you think? Do you think
I,
are you
I,
seeing change in
I,
that?
I do. I see, as time goes by, a much better change. I remember listening back in the day, I had an assistant, and this was when I first got my union card in theater. We're still friends today. And it was a fluke thing. We were in Pittsburgh. Her father was in DC, and he had what they thought was a stroke. And I told her at the time, you need to get in your car and go. And, at summer stock, you're a new show every week. And she said, because this is how you were trained back then. But what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to figure it out. But your dad may not live through the night. And she really stuck by her guns, and he passed the next morning.
Oh,
And I know through the years that that's been incredibly hard on her. And I have never been able to say, I told you so. But I promised myself then that I would, if that ever happened, I would really, really push somebody to go and assure them that their job would be okay. I was probably still too young to do that at the time,
yeah.
saying this is really valuable. And she did not get there to say a really proper goodbye to him by the time he'd passed. And that still, to me, to this day, every time I talk to her, or even write the Christmas card once a year, I know that was such a life-changing experience for her. So to see it evolve, and even to go to the choir, one of the things that they take with them is as an actual medical committee. And there are doctors with us on each side of the stage, which is very valuable. A lot of them got sick in Mexico City, and it was incredibly hot in Peru. And now
Wow.
to be able to have somebody say, hey, I don't feel good. And these people are also volunteers. And these were a lot of the people that brought them back from the pandemic, because they had a medical committee, because we went out like right away. Because like, as you remember, there was a choir in Seattle that had a lot of deaths. So they pulled the plug on these guys, and this committee it's evolved. And oddly enough, there was an epidemiologist in the choir at the
Wow.
time. So they've been able to create such an infrastructure of knowing that they're okay. And a lot of them are older, right? So they're above 50 and they're out of the country. And it's also settling for their families. I'm gonna leave my wife or my husband, and they're gonna go on tour, and I know they're really well taken care of. And I got into an accident in Munich, Germany in 2015 on an advance, and I got a concussion in a car.
Oh,
And yeah, and we got rear-ended, and we didn't have the doctor with us. And I could still to this day remember the tone in my husband's voice as I was calling him from the ambulance. And luckily I had a friend who lived in Munich and I stayed with her for the few days. But it's much different than when he knows if I were to get sick now in the middle of Peru that I just turn left and there's a nurse or a doctor, and it just offers a lot of peace for not only the performer but for the people when it's staffed that way. Or you have breaks. You know, a lot of people on the road now that I talk to, they do keep a therapist, but you can do it on the phone.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what they do spend their days off doing. And I can remember there's a lot of years I probably would have benefited from a travel day and an hour with somebody on the phone. I would have benefited immensely from that.
Yeah, really. I mean, there's a lot now. Who was it? Marty Hom. He actually has a therapist on tour with him as well, which I think is like incredible. In fact, that was Cara Kemp said that. She told me. So it might not be, I don't know if that's completely true for all the tours or whatever, but like I've been saying this on this podcast, like I think it is a brilliant idea to have a therapist on tour who can have that tiny space for people to come in, to go, to let out all your feelings, you know, because it's really, it can be so intense. Something might be happening at home, something might be, you know, happening on as you're setting everything up, you know, something might have happened and you're short-tempered, you're tired. You know, sadly as well, I mean, for me, it's a big thing is, you know, obviously drinking's not so much, I don't think, as it was back in the day. But, you know, you still go out and drink. And, you know, for me, alcohol is a terrible thing to work on. I know it's a lot more stricter now, but, you know, you make you short-wired, you know, it does, you know. And I mean, the last tour I did, which was before COVID, it was before COVID, I was like, okay, I'm doing this alcohol-free, drug-free, everything free.
Yeah.
The best I'd ever felt. Really, the best I'd ever felt. And in fact, even I've done it again now. I've, you know, stopped drinking again for this year. Not that I used to drink loads, but it just makes me a better person.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard to wake up sometimes the following morning, particularly if you've got to go to work.
Don't get me wrong. Like I, you know, I did it. I mean, more so in my career with Formula One. I mean, you know, it was like, make sure you get 1 hour's sleep. Yeah, that's fine. You know, go to work and do it all and smile and I did it. I did it all. I you know, kept strong and, you know, had that lifestyle of traveling on a plane, different countries, here, there, that. I was younger, you know. I have even when I talk to my boss Marcel, like we both say, like, you have a couple of glasses of wine, and I'm like, in the morning, my head, I'm like, oh no, like I just don't like it anymore. But having someone on tour that can be, you're confident in stuff, I think is a wonderful idea.
Well, and I even remember when you started to hit cities, they give you a list of doctors, because that's the other thing that we put off. Why do I have to go to the dentist? I'll get my eyes checked when I get home, that kind of stuff. And I remember showing up in Tucson with like a bad tooth, like I needed a root canal. And I remember like calling the show with an ice pack on my face. But that was the time period where the following morning I woke up and I had all the dentists within walking distance. And I went down and had it dealt with immediately. And by the next night I was fine, because, you know, your tooth goes bad like that. And I remember just being so grateful. I didn't even have to use the yellow pages. It was right there for me. People knew things like that happen when you're on the road, and it was an easy thing to fix.
And actually, it's something that's very simple, you know, to find, you know, where it is. I know, you know, a lot of my production day sheets, you know, it has, you know, it had all the doctors, it had this, because like you said, you know, maybe it happens overnight. It could be literally at midnight and you're like, I need an emergency doctor, I need emergency this. And okay, you're in hotels that should know this, but peace of mind. And again, it shows that the tour is caring for you. You know, and so that's like, you know, for me. But I suppose what would you say is your, like, has been your biggest challenge managing the choir, especially of this size and going to these incredible global cities around the world?
Um, I would probably say, because I'm horrible with languages, is that I had to remind myself, because I was probably in my 30s when I took some stuff to Brazil. You really almost have to build in the time to speak through an interpreter. And there's a lot of people who know English, but when you're doing an in, like I'm even thinking about Buenos Aires, and yes, you can get interpreters. Yes, they give us a budget for interpreters, but it's the time. It's actually the time to do a production meeting. And I'm horrible with Portuguese. I'm much better with Spanish, but I literally also bought an earpiece that if I have my phone on my hand, it'll translate in my ear what they're saying. So I don't have to wait for that leg. They speak to me in Spanish. I understand it. I only have to do half of it back to them.
Brilliant.
And it's been like a game changer because it's just the time. And some of the people we travel with, we have a fabulous crew, and a lot of them do international projects and some of them don't. And you can see them spend the first 2 days go, this takes so long. It takes so long. So it's been that. And I think it's humbling in a good way. It just reminds me that the world is a huge place. And to be able to deal with these crews. And of course, they're all different skill level. And at the same time, in Lima, there was a few of them that lived at the stadium. They had hammocks underneath the stage because I'm assuming it was probably too long of a commute. And the stadium had showers and they were just in hammocks under the stage. So it really it brings you down to the reality that you need to get it right and to be patient, But again, going back to my own children, they have not paid attention in Spanish class. And I said, you'll pay for this one way or the other. Because and my husband speaks Spanish. He's the only one in the house that does. So it was one of those things where I've had to always reteach myself, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing. I mean, look, I'm terrible. I've been living here in Greece, and my language with the Greek language, I struggle. Like I really struggle. But my work is still English. Most of my friends, even though they're Greek, my husband speaks English. So I'm lazy to that, side of things. But when you go traveling or not even traveling, when you go working and you need that communication, I completely understand what you're saying with regards to you're busy, your brain and your mind is already 10 steps ahead of what you're doing next. But you've got to explain this scenario here. So you say it, and then you've got to wait, and then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So what app do you use for the translator in your ear? That's what I was
I got it off Amazon. There was a couple different things. Let me see if it's on. Oh no, my phone's off. If you search it on Amazon, they come up with two really big ones, and it's just a Bluetooth piece in your ear. And they make one where you can give it to somebody who speaks Spanish, and it'll do it both ways for you. So again, it cuts down the time.
But that is, I mean, now with the AI, with everything, like there are so many apps and incredible, functions to actually get by, which sadly makes, is going to make me even more lazier because I'm now going to go out and get this rather than, think I'm actually going to learn Greek now.
Oh no, I'll tell you, the second I got that earpiece during pre-production, I bailed on Duolingo. Like I canceled my subscription.
I was doing so well on my Duolingo, like really every day I was really proud. And then I went to Vegas, which was last year, December, and I haven't done a single silly lesson since.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like I'm all or nothing. I put everything into something, and then as soon as I get out of that routine, that's it.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy. In fact, even, I was saying I love walking. That for me is a really, it clears my mind. I feel fresh. I start the day with a walk. And then even when I was on tour, the last tour, I started doing that. I'd look, okay, we've got the day off, or when we arrive, for like the travel day into the work the next day, I'd look and I'd be like, I can walk there. So I went out, and then slowly, a few more people started joining me because they kind of knew that, oh, Sarah's going to go for a walk. So we went for a walk. The best way to clear my mind, to think just crystal clear. Well, I've had some issues like here with cats and dogs and all the rest of it. I haven't walked really for the last 2 weeks in my mornings. That's it. And I'm like, I said to my husband this morning, I said, I'm going out for a walk this morning. I
Yeah.
said, I need to feel, and I went out and I was like, I love it.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. Why? Why did I? Because it didn't fit into my, I was like an hour later. So then it was like the beach was busier and this was bit. And I'm like, oh no, I can't walk now. Can't walk now. You
Yeah.
can.
Yeah. And I love to walk and I miss it because you forget how it keeps you going on a job, right? Or on a site. And then you come back and it's the same way. Like last night, I just had to walk around the block because I hadn't been walking for days. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and what would you say? So, like going back to the choir, like how would they prepare? Like I'm saying now, I need to go out to walk. I need to go out and how do they prepare themselves in every country? Apart from like you said, you've got the 2 rehearsal days normally, if you can before. But with that amount of people, do you meet up in the rooms? Do you start singing? Like how are you keeping?
They do that a lot, and the orchestra does it a fair amount, and they are required to do a medical form before they leave, and they are required still to test COVID before they get on a chartered plane. So they have kind of their checklist to be able to do, and a lot of them, believe it or not, we do have a fair amount of Spanish speakers.
Okay. Yeah.
And a lot of them are always willing to help because they go out during the day. If we rehearse them, a lot of times it's at night. So they'll go, like they went to the market in Lima. They went to, another area for shopping or like to look at the catacombs. So they really do band together and make sure that they can also do that as groups.
That's which is again, you've got nice little groups to do things. But I could just imagine 300, well, nearly 400 of you like going around the cities. It must be like.
When we did Europe, we use rocket cargo for all of our events, which is just, they still are heaven sent. The logistic lady, we were there in 2016 and there'd been a fair amount of terrorist attacks. So by the time we got to Brussels, the logistic lady said, I'd like to come out and watch the choir arrive. She said, you hear it's 12 to 14 buses. She said, I haven't seen this in any of our stops. So her and I went out to the loading dock and they come rolling in. She got about to the 3rd or 4th bus with them unloading. And she goes, this is too stressful. I have to go back inside. She goes, this is too overwhelming. And I went, you're the logistics lady. And she left. She's like, this is too many people. So they're an event and a half. And I joke that when you move them in a town, that you can see them from the space station. I mean, they're just a massive movement of people.
But that's what I mean. Even I wasn't even thinking of, even getting from the airport to the hotel. 12 buses.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You've got that just everything, and the queue to get your room. Well,
yeah.
I mean, there must be a VIP service for.
They have it down to an art, but when it goes wrong, we arrived in Atlanta during an Atlanta Falcons game, and I'm sure for that logistics team, it didn't dawn on them to cross-reference. Mm-hmm. But I had arrived earlier, their charters came in, and the game was letting out. And Atlanta had lost to the Steelers.
Oh,
and
no.
The streets were covered and the buses there was a few that got stuck on a rounding of the block before anybody would let them in. So when it goes right, it goes right. If there's any small curve in there, it gets to be. But, again, going back to the fact that they are volunteers, they do want to be there. They're pretty good about it.
Being the volunteer. I mean, what's the average age of your choir?
I would say probably between 30 and 40.
Okay.
Like
so
more room, yeah.
Yeah. So it's young. So, they can, and the average, like how long would say, someone that comes in at the age of 30, how long would they stay with the choir until they're 60 or not? Because
just their 20 years. Most of them do hit their 20 years. Okay. And you can actually hit 10 and say, I'm going to resign or I'm going to retire from the choir. And if you want to come back to finish your 10, say in your 50s, you can come back and re-audition and then finish off that time block if you want to.
That's really cool. What a great way to do it. So that's really good. And I mean, obviously with like the faith side of things, I mean, what role does faith in the choir, the mission and the performances, does that Yeah. What?
I think it really is the main focus,
Yeah.
because for them, I always describe them as kind of a really good billboard, right? Because they're just giving you the gift of music. And these concerts that we're doing, they are free. They're free to members of the church, non-members of the church. We don't charge for the tickets. So it's a musical gift, which they take a lot of, I don't know if I want to say pride. They value that's a purpose for them, to be able to sing to people who, we had people coming into Lima who'd spent 24 hours riding on a bus to see this choir, and
But that was free.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. So how? Okay, so this is another question then. How do you? Oh, how do I put this? How do you get a ticket? How do you get a ticket? But then how do you stop other people from selling the ticket because everyone wants the ticket?
Most of the time, like Salt Lake City, because we also do a Christmas concert every year that we distribute on PBS. And Salt Lake City, it's legal to scalp tickets.
Right.
So for my first few years here, you'd occasionally see somebody come in, and I want to say it was about $200 a ticket was the worst couple that I had seen come in that had paid for it. And of course they're welcome in, right? They find another seat for them, but they were devastated. And there is I wouldn't assume there was a legal recourse. They bought it off somebody on the street.
Yeah.
And however, that has died down with people knowing that all of the activities on Temple Square are for free. But there's an art to giving free tickets. You have to overgive them, right? Because people don't have the commitment. If I pay $200, I'm going to show up at that concert. If you hand me a ticket for free and I don't feel like going that night, I know that there's no financial loss in it. So you kind of have to over ticket to an extent. And they've really discovered the art of that in different places of the world and how dedicated people are to come. If a lot of the people who are remotely, if there's a bus offered to them, they'll come in. But we have 21,000 seats in Salt Lake, so there'll be a certain percentage more for the Christmas concert, no matter who the guest is. The headliner has a lot to do with that. They'll over-ticket it a certain amount to make sure it's full.
And what happens? Has it ever been that you've been full and they've been, or you're over-ticketed? Yeah. Like how? And if people have traveled a long way to get to it,
Yeah.
who deals with those people?
It was one time, and I was so happy I was not front of house.
Yeah.
Because we have some overflow areas, and we do a standby line in each city.
Okay.
So, and I don't always get the full numbers, but I think they got most of the people in Lima. But the time it backfired in Salt Lake City, which has to have been over 15 years ago, they had given away too much. And so that, for the 15 years after, really created a ceiling percentage-wise of what you wouldn't want to do. You may see 500 empty seats on like a Thursday night of the Christmas concert rather than go down that road again, of people that got pushed out or told overflows are nice, but I think if the pandemic taught us anything, people are there for the live experience. So I can send you to another building with the TV, but a lot of times people go, I'll go watch a few numbers. They don't stay the whole time.
But I knew I knew obviously the singers, the orchestra, everything was volunteers, and now you said like the medics and like everybody that, but I didn't realize the actual tickets were given away as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a gift of music to the community that we're in. Yeah. Yeah.
Really? So that does bring together, as far as faith, but it's the gift of music and really give it, give it.
Which I think the pandemic really heightened for a lot of people, right? Whether it's a faith-driven thing or not, that ability to sit with people and listen to music was gone quickly. And now I think people cherish it a little differently.
Yeah. I mean, I think you get very spoiled in the sense that when you start working for tours and you can stand at the side of the stage and watch everything, I didn't want to go out into the crowd ever again. And then of course when COVID happened, it was like really like, I really don't want to go out there. But knowing at that particular, those years where you was at home and when's touring going to come back, that was scary.
Yeah. And it was heartbreaking to watch. It was, which is actually how I found this podcast. which is how I found Geezers of Gear, because I'm like, what's going to happen to all of us? And so that's how I started to listen to it. People were thinking of ideas, and that's when a lot of the streaming came. Well, you know, I think like the Indigo Girls streamed from their living room one time, and it started to roll back to being positive and no, we haven't gone anywhere. We'll be back.
Yeah, I mean, Marcel during that time, I mean, he started the Happy Hour podcast, and you know, he'd see like over 100 people coming on here, all chatting, and you know, bringing up ideas. How can we make this better? You know, how can we all come together? He connected so many people during that time.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to say to myself, you should bring it back, you know, out for like a mental health side of thing, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
wherever you are in the world, come on, let's tune back in, like be once a month, do a happy hour, come back. But sadly, I think now people are too busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It
you
is
know,
all back in full swing, but yeah, I agree.
you know, and I would like to say, I mean, I think I'm probably an exception to the rule, as that I haven't gone back into touring. But during that time, it really hit home that I wanted to be home.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was a real, like you said, you know, at one point you're burnt out before you got onto Celine Dion.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so it was the same kind of thing there. And the worry of, oh, am I going to get a tour? Oh, but my friend's out on a tour. Why didn't I get that call? Like, I can do that, and I can do this, and that whole stress of everything. And I was like, I don't want that up and down roller coaster anymore.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the biggest, you know, sort of decisions for me, you know, not going back
Yeah.
into that. And I was very fortunate, and I'm now here talking to you.
Yeah. Well, and before that, when we ended up being in Europe in 2016, that really panicked because by then I had a family, and that is when Paris had been attacked with the Bataclan and Brussels, and you know, it's funny as the story can be, but I turned to my husband and said, we have to go update our will,
Oh
right?
gosh, that's scary.
Yeah. And my employer's like, do you want to go? Should we hire somebody? And I'm like, no, I think I'm going to be okay. But I had updated my will. And I went, I never thought that would happen, you know, and then to go into the pandemic after that, and then to be hit with this touring blitz, it's kind of full circle, you know?
And I mean, yes, you have to be prepared now, but when you say that word, you know, to sort your will out, you know, it's scary, because you know, at the end of the day, you know, we're just going to work,
Yeah.
and you don't think of, you know, bad things happening.
Yeah.
I will be honest, when I was in Vegas, it was quite a busy scenario, like busy scene in somewhere, and I was like, ooh, what if? And first time ever, because here in Crete, I mean, there's nothing, you know,
Yeah.
there's, you know, I've got no, never say no, never, touch wood. But really, and it was the first time I was like, oh, what about if someone crazy comes in and shoots here?
Yeah.
First time I thought that.
Well, and that's the first time I think work-wise it had come up for me, where they said, hey, we're going to spend tomorrow with scenarios. And I'm like, for what? You know? And we were tucked in right next to what was Mandalay Bay at that time that had Siegfried and Roy. You had to have a whole policy. You know, you don't really call ambulances a lot of times on some of these gigs. You call private numbers to dispatch the ambulance so you're not on a public airway. That was the first time I started to think about that. And it's not uncommon to have bag scares in Las Vegas and what you're supposed to do. And then, you know, I was fine in Europe in 2016, but when I had to explain to the crew, so if this happens, you have to go here, and if not, this is where you go, and our security team will find us at lot C. So please tell your wives that. And I saw a couple of their faces go, you know, again, knowing our organization won't force them, but they knew that was really a way of life now.
Yeah, and I learned, well, it wasn't anything like an attack or anything, but I was sadly involved in a hotel fire many years ago, and really, like, it was quite a small one in Austria, a little small hotel, asleep, 2 o'clock in the morning, and we had a busy, it was like P1 the next day, practice 1 the next day. So we're all up at 5 o'clock anyway. But at 2 o'clock in the morning, we've got, hey, banging everywhere. I was like, what are you doing? I got out of bed, opened the door, smoke everywhere.
Wow.
Couldn't get down. Of course, at this point, I'd never thought of being, nobody thinks they're going to be in a fire. So we literally go out the fire escape. We managed to get out. There were still people on different levels. And from that point on, everyone was fine, by the way, before I continue. Everyone was fine. The hotel sadly wasn't. But everyone was fine. But now I always have with me I always check where the fire escapes are. Always check different ways to, and I never used to do this before, ever. Go in, yep, fine.
Yeah.
Always check different ways to get out. I have my passport, which is the biggest thing. That was the biggest thing for me, because everyone was like, we all come out basically in our pajamas, and then everyone was like, well, what about passports, money? Like, we've got no identity, you've got nothing.
Yeah.
So now I always keep everything by the door. Even here, I've got my passport there. If anything happens in the house, boom, I'm out. Passport.
Yeah.
That's all I care about.
Yeah.
And we've all been in some scary situations, and I hope that, not to be in it, and I hope for obviously other people not to be in it as well.
But that is the world.
It is the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been watching. I mean, I really try. Like, I don't have a TV to watch the news, so I'm one of those. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not interested. Sorry. But things do. You hear things. My mum calls me. She tells me what's going on. The amount of plane crashes you guys have had over there recently is insane.
Oh yeah. And when we were in Lima, people kept walking around with their phone going, one flipped over, and I was like, stop showing me, stop showing me, and that's the only good thing about coming home exhausted is you're not as wound up. But we were going into Atlanta that had also had another issue, and it just seems to be this like influx of them happening like within a short amount of time.
It was.
Yeah.
And crazy weather right now. I mean, it's not the islands here, but we've got one of the famous islands, Santorini. Well, they basically evacuated the island with most of the locals. It was probably about a month ago now because of like really bad earthquakes.
Wow.
And that was really scary. There's been flash floodings in different places. Even here, I think it was last year, we literally had earthquakes. Well, every day the house would shake in the morning, and I was like, what is going on? Like, what's going on in this world? Like,
yeah, I know.
Really. But how do you, so you've got 2 teenagers, 17, and you've got your son as well.
15, yeah.
He's 15.
Yeah.
How do you manage that with doing your job?
I think they're kind of over mom. They've reached that teenager like over mom phase, and I got them. What's that?
But you've been 20 years working for the choir and having babies at the same time, and like, wow, like
I think I know a lot of it was my husband who knew, because the job also offers a lot of flexibility. And I think I mentioned to you, our son is a brain cancer survivor by 3 times. Yeah. And so we really stayed put for the health insurance. But then it's also, again, going back to the conductors of the Tabernacle Choir, they knew that. And I have the ability to staff the weekly TV show for a tour, for that matter, which I've been around long enough to know that's not an easy thing to do for somebody to grant you permission to be able to go to a doctor's appointment if you want, or be on site if you want. And, our hours are beneficial for kids at different ages, right? When you're working a rehearsal at nighttime and you can take them to school the following morning, it's all worked out. And a lot of it has to do with the architect of my husband, who was willing to work around it or work at a different time. And so just really grateful for the health insurance, but they are not wowed by the touring. I thought getting them passports and saying, come with me, but they're too far into teenagehood now. They're like, And so I told them the last one really is Brazil, if you want to go, because my daughter will be 18. And I said, you can't call me at 20 and ask me to go down to Mexico City. I might not have the money, right? So you're missing this opportunity. And she's kind of starting to believe me. All three of them love to travel. But as you know, when you travel for work, you could kind of take it or leave it. You know, they love to travel. They want to travel everywhere, but they kind of take this whole schedule a little bit for granted. And I'm going to try to at least get them out the door once to an international spot. They followed me when we played Boston and Carnegie Hall. They went as little kids to that stop because I have family and friends there. So they ended up, that was the one stop. And they did Northern California. They followed me to that. So they're great. They're flexible, but I think they're kind of over mom. They're in the over mom phase.
But I suppose the good thing is, you know, yes, you've called it a tour, but it isn't like a tour where you're gone for
Right.
3 months, 4 months. You know, you are home. Yes, I take it you go into an office or do you work remotely?
Both. I'm a hybrid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is great as well, which is fantastic. And if you don't mind talking about it, your son, a brain tumor 3 times.
Yeah. At 14 months, when we had him, he woke up and his neck was crooked, which happens, right, when they're younger and their muscles are developing. So we took him in and had this amazing pediatrician, who's still our pediatrician to this day, took a week and sent him through every test imaginable, because most doctors would have sent him to physical therapy, but she was instinctual enough to get blood drawn, to get a CT scan, to eventually get an MRI, and that's how they found it. And so it's come back twice to the same spot and then once to a different spot, and now he's 6 years of not having brain cancer, but believe it or not, he's had skin cancer, which they attribute some to the radiation coming into the skin.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So he is living with a miracle.
Seriously, he's a walking miracle,
Yeah.
but that brings me to, like, obviously the charity Make-A-Wish, because I love Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
And
what they do.
when I was with Lion King in Los Angeles years ago, it was still new enough that a lot of kids' wishes were coming to see that show. And maybe I was probably old enough to realize the severity of it, but we loved it, right? A kid would come to the door and you showed him Pumbaa and Timon. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun. But it was one girl, she was 16 and dying of breast cancer. She was terminal. And I remember going to open up the door with the rest of the stage managers, and we all just needed a minute. Because you're there to make this kid's 30 minutes of joy. And we're like, just give us a minute. So when it came up for my own son and he wished to go to Disney, I was like, well, okay, and you're just so worried about your kid and you're so in survival mode. But the second that organization brings you in, comes to your house, does the stuff of granting the kid the wish, and he's dancing around Disney, he's young enough to know that this is a good time to him, but for his sister and my husband and I, it meant the world to us to be taken out of the world of doctors and transported to nothing but joy. And so since then, I see what they do for people on the social media, and it is almost like it's almost a necessity for the soul to pause on what you're doing for your child, whether they want a swing set or they want to go to Paris. It all means the same.
Yeah, and I think, but I mean, from that age, I mean, my family also there's a history of different illnesses like that, and it's not just obviously your son, or like it was my uncle and it was other people, that it's the family that are really affected as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's the, so to have you, like your husband, your daughter, and being able to work where you can take the time to go to the hospitals to do all this, and you just got to thank goodness he's okay now, and
Yeah.
it's been 6 years now.
Since he's had it all in the brain. Yeah. So, and
Okay,
we,
but
and
not
I
on
really,
skin.
right, the skin, yeah. But I think too, if you look at cancer, and pediatric cancer is particularly heartbreaking for all of us, but there are a lot of miracles walking along. I mean, they've made a lot of advancements. Is it cured? Can you go in and turn in your card for cancer A and they cure it? No. But the people living with it, the people beating it completely, the numbers are, from my
Yep.
childhood, astronomical. My mother passed of lung cancer in the middle of my son being sick. And then we had a cousin's mother who got sick before, different types of lung cancer, different treatment. And she lived almost 15 years past my mother, which is a
Wow.
miracle in itself. And that was just a different choice in treatment. The other one I mentioned was Stand Up to Cancer, that was created not that many years ago, and that's a finding a different path. It was created by a few people, and when I went back and worked the telethon, it was during Laura Ziskin's time, who was a very well-known Hollywood producer that was one of the founders of it. And they look for different paths, right? If you call up your doctor and your doctor says, well, this won't work, you can call them up and they could say, well, this is what we know is sort of working. This is what's in trial. And they have a very aggressive approach and open up doors that aren't necessarily open for people, which is why I still give to them and would do anything for them.
And that's one thing I like to do with Geezers of Gear now, especially, is, it's a post, it's something on Facebook, it's something this, but actually mentioning these charities, because the more people that do something like this, social media is such an incredible tool, and it's free,
Yeah.
It takes me a little second, and I'll do a post about Make-A-Wish Foundation, or I'll do a post about another charity. That's why I always ask any of the ladies, or even on Geezers of Gear, do you support a charity? Because for me, it takes nothing to open up people's eyes and know that there's people out there that are caring and doing good things for other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. But Heidi, I can't believe I just looked. It's an hour and 20 minutes. Like,
Okay.
Honestly, I could talk to you for this has been so great. I've loved hearing about how you started, about the Celine Dion, about your kids, about the choir, and yeah, thank you so much for just being part of this with me. Really.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, and maybe one day our paths will cross somewhere. And I said, if I get my better singing voice, maybe I'll move over.
You let me know.
I'm joking. I'm really joking. But thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
La 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 la, ladies, the ladies. La, la, la. Now here's the leading ladies by Geezers of Gear. On tour, maybe she got some stories to share. Now here's the leading ladies by the Geezers of Gear. Rock star ladies with some stories to share, because la 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 ladies, the ladies, la 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 ladies. Yeah, she's a Now here's the leading ladies by Geezers of Gear. Rockstar ladies with some stories to share.